Hello, everybody. This is Beth Swantek, your professor. Trying this out, doing a video recording, just to introduce this week's lesson, package scripts. I have the notes here that I actually posted for you so you can follow around. So packages are completely different than the PSAs and commercials that we did last week. A package is something you've seen many of them when you watch the news. A package is the little story that the anchor person at the desk says, and now we're going to Beth Swantek in the field in Clawson. And there I would be introducing my story. Maybe I'm going to go right into my story. Maybe I'm not standing there. Maybe I'm just narrating a story and telling you about something. It's called a package because it's a complete little package of a reporter's story. The person at the anchor desk has nothing to do with it. When I was a reporter, we actually went out and shot our package, and I brought it in. That's when we were using tape, and I literally took the tape down into the control room, and they rolled it into the newscast. So that's why it's called a package. So that's what you're doing this week. This is news. This is completely different. We're not selling anything. We are not promoting an idea like we did in the PSA. In this instance, we are telling news, okay? Things that are newsworthy that people need to know, okay? Packages are short. They're going to be about a minute and a half at the most. Sometimes they're a minute and 15. They can be just a minute. It's a very short story because when you think about a newscast, it's a half hour, but there's a lot of commercials. So there's probably about 20 minutes of straight news, and 5 of that might be weather, and a little less might be sports, okay? So it's got to be very short. Let me look at my notes here. See what I've... So when you see a reporter standing on the scene, that is called a stand-up. So you indicate that in your script as we'll go over. I will give you a tutorial on the script like I did last week with the commercial. So that is one aspect of the package. Another aspect is that you have video. Again, you're the reporter going out on the scene, maybe by yourself. I usually worked with a cameraman myself, and I was the reporter. So I went out and got the story, interviewed all the people. Let's say it was a fire. Then I would interview the fire chief because I need an expert, professional person to talk about the fire. So of course it's going to be the fire chief. I'm going to interview maybe a couple witnesses. If the homeowner is there and they got out of the house, I'm going to try to interview them too. Okay, so you're going to try to interview everybody that has to do with the story because it's going to make your story more interesting. Now, you can't always interview all those people, okay? Sometimes they're not available. Sometimes the fire might be a warehouse fire and there aren't any people there. Maybe the owner of the warehouse, then you'd want to get them. You try to get everyone that pertains to it to make it more interesting. Now, for your package, I'm giving you all the material. I'm not having you source it because this is a writing class and we don't have time to do that, although that would be a whole lot of fun if we could, but that's not what this class is about. I'm just trying to teach you a lot of different kinds of writing. So if you get in a situation where you're working for a company and you're the only media person, you're going to have exposure to a lot of different kinds of writing depending on the kinds of things they ask you to do. So that's kind of the purpose of this class. It's more, I'm kind of hitting you with different kinds of writing to prepare you to work in a media capacity. Okay, so let's see what else about packages. Most of the story, so the stand-up is really just a very short part of the story. I usually would do one stand-up per story. Once in a while you'll see reporters, they'll be on live shot and they might do more than one stand-up. They might go to the stand-up, the reporter on the scene, and the reporter is live, and then the reporter begins to tell the story, and they tell the story, and then they come back to the reporter at the end and they're live still, and that's and they have a closing stand-up. Sometimes, though, it's all taped. The reporter goes out, tapes the story, comes back and hands the package, and then they roll it. And then usually the reporter would just have one stand-up. So the rest of the package is voiceover, the reporter's voice, voicing it over, and then sound bites. Sound bites are small little clips of an interview. So if I interview the fire chief, I'm going to do a full interview. I'm going to ask him several questions. How did the fire start? Did anyone get hurt? Do you have it under control? How much damage? Was it arson? All these things. But I'm not going to put all that into my story. I'm going to take one little part of that interview, and that little part is called a soundbite. So we'll go over this when I go over the script as well. Okay? So the rest of it, so your package is going to be a combination of you telling the story, voiceover, showing the images, and then sound bites from the different people you interviewed. And it's kind of going to be a cadence. You tell something, you have a sound bite. You tell something, you have a sound bite. You tell something, and then at the end maybe you do your stand-up. That's when I usually did my stand-ups. But you could do one in the middle. You could do one at the beginning. That's not as customary, but it's done. The sound bites help you tell the story. You tell something, there's a fire in Troy, it's a warehouse, smoke is billowing everywhere, and then you go to the soundbite maybe of the fire chief saying, we have no idea how it got started, we got called at 3 p.m. and here we are, blah, 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 and then I tell some more of the story. All the news, in news stories, what needs to be told is the who, what, where, and when, and why. That's what you're answering in news, okay? So you see this is very different than a commercial or a PSA. There's a very different purpose for it. You're telling news that people need to know, something that is important, that has just happened. Sometimes you're going to tell the how, but not always. It depends on if there is a how. So who, what, where, when, why, you always want answered, sometimes a how, okay? In this case, how did the fire get started, okay? This is the core of the story that must be present, of course, although there's going to be additional information too. If you're writing a story about a house fire, you want to get the response from people, the neighbors. If you see, you'll see that often on the news. There is some type of crime in the city or someplace, a fire, a murder, theft, whatever. A lot of times they will get the witnesses, they will get neighbors. They'll knock on the door of the neighbor and go, hey, did you see anything happen? What do you think of this? And that's a very common thing to get. You're trying to get somebody that's as close to the story as possible that can say something. Okay, so that's it for this. I am now going to do your video tutorial and go over that script, the example script that I gave you with notations on it. See you on the next video.